Order. Order. We now come to an important debate about the future of the under 10-metre fishing fleet in the South West, and I call Steve Double to move the motion.
Thank you very much, Mr. Oliver. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship, and I beg to move that this House has considered the future of the under 10-metre fishing fleet in the South West, and I'm delighted to be able to bring this subject to debate to the House today, and delighted to be joined by a number of my Cornish colleague and also my honourable friend from across the water in Plymouth. I think it would be appropriate to begin this debate by acknowledging that last Sunday was the first National Fishing Remembrance Day. We should always remember that fishing continues to be one of the most dangerous occupations, and we should remember those down the years who have lost their lives whilst fishing. We are blessed in Cornwall with a richness of natural resources, and our diverse and plentiful fishing waters are one of those resources. And there is no doubt of the importance that the under 10-metre fleet plays nationally and locally. According to DEFRA, the under 10-metre fishing fleet represents around 80% of the UK's total fishing vessels, while providing 50% of catch-related jobs, often in coastal communities like those found in my part of Cornwall, which tend to be the less affluent and often more vulnerable to socio-economic challenges. The under 10-metre fishermen land over £110 million worth of fish and shellfish annually. They are one of the most important parts of the fishing industry, and we should be doing all we can to support them. Many of them are small family-run businesses which have been handed down from generation to generation over many years. It's fair to say that they are the backbone of our fishing industry in the South West. They are at the heart of coastal communities in places like Mevagissey, Newquay and Foy in my constituency and indeed across Cornwall. They are vital for the local community of these, economy of these coastal communities. Every fisherman on a boat supports up to 15 other jobs ashore in the seafood supply chain. They also support tourism. People love to come to places like Mevagissey to see a working fishing port. And they are also a key part of our local culture, shaping our local communities not just through the food that they provide, but also through things like music, such as the many sea shanty choirs, the Fishermen's Friends at Port Isaac being the most famous, of course. Of the 3,700 under 10 vessels registered across the UK, 75 are in my constituency, mainly in Mevagissey and Newquay, and we have over 400 across Cornwall as a whole. But the under 10-metre fleet is sadly in decline. We have been losing around more than 100 vessels a year. And this is concerning, as the hope or the expectation was that as a result of leaving the EU and regaining control of our fishing waters, we would have the opportunity to grow our fishing industry. The under 10 fleet is the most sustainable and has the lowest environmental impact when compared to larger vessels. Firstly, because they are self-limiting. They're unable to go out in heavy seas and high winds. They're also limited by range. They're very often referred to as the inshore fishing fleet because they mostly fish within the 6-metre nautical mile inshore zone. Unlike large vessels, under 10s can't go hundreds of miles out and spend many days at sea. Many of them are handliners or use smaller nets. This means that on average, the under 10-metre vessel spends less than 100 days at sea in any typical year. In that regard, they are more sustainable, and their mode of operation manages to help prevent the overfishing of stocks. They tend to produce higher quality fish, and they focus on quality rather than volume. This also means that there is usually minimal bycatch and almost no discards, therefore limiting the environmental footprint that they have. And despite their significance to the fishing industry, by almost every statistic, they are only allocated a small part of the UK quota, around 2 to 3%. Our under 10 metre inshore fleet is resilient, it is flexible, it is able to adapt. Despite the many challenges they face, they will more often than not find ways to adapt and adjust to the continuing challenges that they face to continue to make a living. But we should not take that for granted. One of the challenges that they are facing is the impact of climate change and the warming of our seas and the changes that we are seeing in where fish are found and the availability of species our fishermen can catch. Fish will move and are moving to cooler seas further north, and the warmer waters around the Cornish coast are attracting different species of fish. What I hear from local fishermen is that the MMO is seemingly overlooking the shift in fisheries, with little lateral movement being allowed for our fishermen. All this means is that if you have an entitlement to a particular species, and you are pigeonholed to that species, which then move further north due to the warming of our waters, you're required to buy expensive species quotas or change their licences, which generate significant additional costs. And this is disproportionately impacting younger fishermen, of which we have many in Mevagissey, who have mortgages to pay and families to feed, but haven't been able to make this lateral movement across the fisheries to adapt to changes brought on by our changing climate. Quite a few of them in Mevagissey are suffering from the high costs of buying entitlement to, for instance, fishing bass. This lack of flexibility is hurting our under 10 metre fishermen harder than the larger vessels, who are generally part of larger businesses and they're able to absorb the cost of moving to new fisheries. I'd just like to mention 3 specific species that I would bring to the Minister's attention where I think we could be doing better for our inshore fleet. First of all, in regard to bass, the Harbour Master at Mevagissey, Andrew Trevarton, has made the case to me very clearly that scientific evidence shows an increase in bass stock in our seas, yet there is still a number of boats in the southwest who have no entitlement to bass whatsoever. From 2012 onwards, those boats were effectively removed from the entitlement due to not being able to catch any within a 12-month period. The MMO and DEFRA should at least consider all boats to be active in this fishery. Most of the boats will be handliners, but even they are unable to access bass. And commercial fishermen often feel that they are being unfairly treated as compared to recreational or charter anglers. And this applies to a number of species, but it particularly applies to bass. The recreation angler can go out and fish for a couple of bass a day, every day, and keep their catch, whereas an under 10 boat may end up with dozens of bass as a bycatch, but without the requisite entitlement to keep a single one. Fishermen tell me that, in their opinion, they do not think there will be any danger to the bass stock, given that the French have stopped pair trawling for these species. We need flexibility in our quota system by allowing boats who have not yet built a track record to be given a quota for bass. Also, at the moment, a lot of bass is caught as bycatch and has to be discarded, and this seems irrational and wasteful, given the lack of scientific evidence to suggest any significant risk to the stock. Secondly, tuna. Tuna is the most important species to come into Cornish water in recent years as a result of our warming seas. We are seeing a lot of tuna turning up in our waters right now. And I'd like to place on record my thanks to the Minister for the work he has done to develop the pilot scheme for tuna. It would seem that this important species will be a growing part of the fish available in Cornish waters in the years ahead. And I would ask the Minister to ensure that DEFRA and the MMO do all they can to further develop a sustainable commercial tuna quota in the coming years. This could be a real win for the Cornish under-10 fleet and help them develop a new market. It is vital we ensure that local fishermen can make the most of this new opportunity. There is a danger that as a nation we end up conserving our tuna, but not for UK vessels. Instead, we are seeing the stock swim over into international waters outside of the UK waters for international vessels to hoover up. Tunas are a predatory species which catch other species to feed on. They are growing fat on the fish in UK waters, only then to swim outside of UK waters to be caught by someone else. So I'd argue that we do not need to take an overly cautious approach to tuna and allow a greater quota in the years ahead. And I would also just mention one other thing that I know the Minister is aware of, and that is the limiting of vessels to only have either a commercial or a charter licence. And this is affecting some of the fishermen in Mevagissey who, up until now, have operated both licences. We don't impose this restriction on any other species, and whilst I appreciate some of the thinking behind that, I would urge the government to look again at this and see what we can do going forward. Thirdly, I want to mention pollock. Now, having had the opportunity to raise pollock quota in a German debate just a few weeks ago, I'm not going to go into great detail once again. But I want to place again on record my thanks and the thanks of many fishermen in my constituency that have relied on pollock, to the Minister and indeed to the Secretary of State for their great support in enabling us to establish a compensation scheme. This has been a lifeline to dozens of fishermen who were so adversely affected by the removal of the quota. This shows that this government is on the side of our fishing industry in Cornwall and is willing to listen and act when needed. We now need to work to re-establish a pollock quota in a sustainable way as soon as possible. It is widely recognised by most that the best way to increase the stock of pollock and for many other species would be to have a closed period during the spawning season. And I would ask the Minister to take note of this particular point. And as we look forward to restoring a TAC for pollock, hopefully in the not too distant future. Before summing up, I want to raise a very recent issue which is going to have a huge impact on fishermen in Cornwall, and that is the closure of the Plymouth fish market. Most of the fish landed in mid-Cornwall currently goes to Plymouth, but the market is due to close in the coming days. This will mean fish from mid-Cornwall having to go to Newlyn, which is likely to mean it will be a day late getting to market. This will have an impact on the price that the fishermen can secure. This is not a sustainable situation going forward, and we need to recognise the huge impact that it's going to have on the viability, both of the fishermen, but also on the port of Mevagissey. One immediate issue is that the market have asked for the return of all the fish boxes immediately that the fishermen used to pack the fish for landing. Now, I know the fishermen have applied to the MMO for a grant to help in replacing these boxes quickly, and I would ask the Minister if he would look at what can be done to help them replace these boxes as a matter of urgency. But going forward, we really need to see the Plymouth market continue, and we need to find an answer to keep it open as soon as possible. I know there are discussions going on with various partners within the fishing industry, but again, I'd ask the Minister for any help he can give to help us to ensure that that vital market remains open. As I finish, Ms Rees, we will shortly be approaching the end of the current 5-year agreement with the Trade and Cooperation Agreement with the EU. This will provide an opportunity to review and renegotiate our arrangements for the management of our fish stocks and quota. As we look to renegotiate, there is one request that the under 10 metre fishing fleet have made very clear to me would be their priority in any renegotiations. And that would be that we take more control of our fishing waters out to the 12-mile limit. The current arrangement means that foreign vessels are able to fish right up to our 6-mile limit. This includes waters that our under 10 fleet would be able to fish in. Fishermen tell me that they often feel that foreign vessels are literally taunting them by sitting on the 6-mile limit, hoovering up the fish from our waters. Many would like to see us ban all foreign vessels from fishing right out within our 12-mile coast. This may not be immediately achievable, but I hope it's something that we would set as a mid-term goal. And in the meantime, we should seek to have much more control over what boats are allowed to fish in these waters. In conclusion, Ms Rees, our under 10-metre fishing boats are the heart of many of our communities. They are the backbone of our Cornish fishing industry and support hundreds of jobs in the supply chain. It is vital that we do all we can to ensure that they have a viable future, to continue to provide high-quality seafood for the UK and for export markets in the most sustainable way. I know that the Minister has already demonstrated that he wants to do all he can to support this part of the sector. I look forward to listening to further contributions to this debate and indeed to the Minister's response. But I trust that we can send a clear message from this House today to the many dedicated fishermen who risk their lives to provide us with the highest quality fish for the table, that we recognise the important job that they do and that we are on their side and that they have our support.
Remind members that they should bob if they wish to be called to speak in the debate, and I intend to start the wind-ups at about 5:13 to allow Steve Double a couple of minutes at the end to wind up. So if members speak for less than 5 minutes, I'd be really grateful. The question is that this House has considered the future of the under 10-metre fishing fleet in the southwest. I call Jim Shannon.
Pleasure to speak in this. I want to first of all congratulate the Honourable Gentleman for St Austell and UK for tabling this debate. I know the title is very clear what it means, and I understand that, Madam Chair. At the end of it, I wish to speak to the debate that the Honourable Gentleman has referred to and pose some questions, if I can, and how this part of the United Kingdom is treated in relation to this issue and the importance of the under 10-metre boats as well. I absolutely appreciate the member's desire to make his fleet the centre of debate, and yet I also make the point that the under 10s need support right across the United Kingdom, not just in the southwest. Honourable member in his introduction referred to the 3,000 plus 10-metre, under 10-metre boats that there are in the United Kingdom. I have some of those in my own constituency, and I just want to pose, if I can, a couple of issues, because the Minister here, while not directly responsible for fishing in Northern Ireland, has some responsibility for allocation of quota, and I want to put that on record if I can, if at all possible. Also, and taking into account the fact that the visa process is costly for skilled workers who aren't paid in the highest band, it is clear also that we really do need to support in recruiting and training local crew, which quite seriously the Honourable Gentleman and any others who are here will agree, because the same recruiting, the same training is important for no matter where you are. We need initiatives to bring new entrants into the industry, and that is equally applicable to my constituency in Northern Ireland as it is to the southwest. Fishing is not necessarily, Madam Chair, top of the careers choice agenda. It's a fact. And how do we make it more attractive in an urban school? And the fact is that we do not begin to attract younger people into fishing, then we will not have a secure British fishing future regardless of quotas. One note of caution I would urge in relation to the under 10-metre quota allocation, which the Honourable Gentleman has referred to, and I know it's important, but there may be some variation of opinions in relation to it. I point out the obvious, that any review of quota allocation mechanism to ensure under 10s get a bigger slice of the cake may be at the expense of existing quota holders, and if a UK-wide approach is taken, this could be difficult for the fleet in Northern Ireland, who are beginning to already struggle to make ends meet. I did my advice centre in Portavogie last Saturday. Out of most of the people who come to see me, they're all about fishing issues, and they reiterated that again. But if at the end of the quarter of the year there are some of the quota that hasn't been used, to me, it's rather than lose that quota, it would be applicable to disperse that amongst the under 10 metre boats. I think that would be the way I would see it. But this may well be the result, and I must flag this with the Minister, there must be cognizance of the Northern Ireland fishing fleet and the Scots fleets, even when discussing the English allocation. I know the Minister always tries to be helpful in his responses and any questions that I've asked him in the Chamber. So any sweeping generalised changes may not prove popular to some of my fishermen back home. I wish to, in conclusion, Madam Chair, I wish to briefly raise the issue of zero catch advice on pollock and possibly the recent scallop closures, and encourage government to engage early enough with fishermen. The honourable gentleman had his adjournment debate. He spoke extremely well, as he always does, and he got, I think, a fairly good response from the Minister in relation to it. And I think he was pleased, and certainly I was encouraged by that. But when it comes to engaging early enough with fishermen, the mitigation strategies and alternative management measures might be developed in a more timely fashion to ensure that information and engagement drives our approach in these areas. I support him and what he brings forward. I will support others who will speak as well, because they all want the best for their fishermen. I want the best for my fishermen as well, and with that, I support what the Honourable Gentleman is saying. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Rees. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship. This debate has come at a timely moment, as the Honourable Member for St Austell and Newquay mentioned, with last Sunday being the first National Fisheries Memorial Day. I was honoured to lay a wreath in lieu with my daughter in memory of my late husband, Neil Murray, and I paid tribute to all the rescue services and the seafarers' charities who provide so much support for this important industry in so many ways. Ms Rees, I would also like to thank my right honourable friend the Minister for returning my call so quickly last Friday to listen to the concerns about the difficulties faced by the local Loo fleet in transporting their catch given the closure of Plymouth trawler agents, where the landings have traditionally been sold. I hope that a resolution can be found by us all working together with Loo Harbour Commissioners. Whilst the news about Plymouth trawler agents has come as a surprise, I'd like to put on record my personal thanks to David and Alison Pessell, long-standing friends whom I have known for the past 40 years. From when David's vessel, the TARDIS of the Young, was pair trawling with our vessel, the Golden Dawn. Some 40 years later, both boats sadly lie on the seabed, and Neil is sadly no longer with us. I sincerely hope that David and Alison enjoy a restful retirement, which they deserve, after serving the industry in the South West selflessly, both locally and nationally, for such a long time. Now I'd like to turn to one thing, given the limited time, Minister, which I think will secure a future for the under 10 metre fleet. As the former owner of an under 10 metre trawler, the Cygnus 33R Boy Andrew, I can honestly say that I know how these vessel owners struggle to make a living, but can also confirm that our boat was part of our family and gave us a comfortable living, although I admit it could be stressful at times. I met with the NFFO yesterday, and they agreed with me that there is this one thing that could help these small vessels continue to provide us with a healthy source of protein, and I would ask the Minister to consider this today. On the 30th of December 2020, during the debate on the European Union Future Relationship Bill, I said we must prepare ourselves for 2026. With the UK as an independent coastal state, the Minister can take decisions to free us from the fisheries management regime that has been hampered by the constraints of the CFP. We can honour our obligations under the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, but be flexible to ensure that all UK fishermen can benefit from this partial freedom and take the necessary steps to ready ourselves when we, as we must, really do take back control of our waters in 2026. Minister, access to our 6 to 12 mile limit was agreed and set out in the London Convention of 1966, which predates our membership of the European Union. Article 3 sets out, within the belt between 6 and 12 miles measured from the baseline of the territorial sea, the right to fish shall be exercised only by the coastal state and by such other contracting parties, the fishing vessels of which have habitually fished in that belt between the 1st of January 1953 and the 31st of December 1962. This specifically named the vessels in question, and I put it to the Minister today that it is unlikely that any of these vessels are at sea or fishing today. The 2002 CFP review put access to the 6 to 12 mile limit on a permanent basis, which changed the original London Convention, and instead of access for specific vessels, access was given to the number of vessels from other member states. Now that we are no longer subject to the CFP legislation, it's time to revert to the terms of the 1966 London Convention. The time has come to ensure that access to our 6 and 12 mile limit is reserved solely for UK-registered fishing vessels. Specific conservation rules in each area can be set by IFCAs. When I put this to the NFFO on Monday, they agreed that this is the single most important protection the Minister could provide to ensure a future for our under 10 metre inshore fleet. These vessels are the way that new blood, as has been mentioned, enters this vital industry, and we must do everything we can to support them. I'm going to finish with a message to all fisherfolk throughout our nation. Fair winds and following seas. Thank you, Ms Rees.
Luke Pollard.
It's a pleasure speaking this debate. I congratulate the honourable member for St Austell and Newquay for the way he introduced this debate, and I echo many of his sentiments, not only about the importance of the under-10 fleet, not only to Cornwall, but to Plymouth and across the southwest as well, but the rough conditions that many of them go to sea to try and earn a living, to put fish on our dinner tables, and the thanks. The first National Remembrance Day for those who work in the fishing industry was a welcome addition to the calendar, and I'm glad that there were remembrance events right around our country to remember those people who we've lost at sea. It is a really important part of our fishing and part of our coastal communities to have a vibrant fishing community, and I support his work in trying to support that in Cornwall, because as we've seen from his remarks, what is good for Cornwall is often good for Plymouth and vice versa. Chair, I'll direct most of my remarks in relation to the closure of the Plymouth fish market, which has a profound impact on the under-10 fleet, not only who land fish in Plymouth, but also who land fish in ports right across the southwest and then have them overlanded to be sold from Plymouth. I think the closure demonstrates a real fragility and uncertainty in the sector. For local fishers in particular, those small scales who can't relocate and want to work out of a port where auctions are not available, they'll be most affected by this. That's not only fishers in Plymouth, but also in ports right across southeast Cornwall and further into Cornwall. There's clear additional transport costs that will be levied on those fishers, not only in terms of the landing dues that they'll have to land in the port that they normally land in, but also for the overlanding and the delays. It is really important that fish can be gotten to market in a speedy and efficient manner to preserve the quality of the fish and therefore the value of the fish. And any delay in that process risks loading further costs on a sector that's already struggled quite a bit. I've spoken to Plymouth City Council about this, who have already met with Plymouth Trawler Association, the Plymouth Fishing and Seafood Association, and have had discussions with Sutton Harbour Holdings, who are the landlords for the fish market site. It's fair to say that after the news that the PTA were closing, and I would also like to echo the thanks from my neighbour for South East Cornwall to David and Alison Pessel. They've both been real stalwarts for our industry, and I wish them a happy retirement as well. But the closure of PTA fundamentally undermines the viability of the Plymouth fish market, a building that we needed to be updated anyway to bring to modern standards. There's a real concern that once they close their doors on the 17th of May, transporting catch to other markets, be it Brixham, Newling or elsewhere, will be an interim measure, but will soon be locked in to be a permanent additional cost to those fishers, which is really concerning. I think everyone wants to restore a market and an auction in Plymouth. And to do that, I'd be grateful if the Minister could assist us. There is cross-party concern for this here because we are all representing our fishers who want to get a good deal. Making sure, for instance, that the fish boxes that are being asked to be returned can be secured. That is a really strong investment that the PTA have made, but it's a big cost for fishers to replace them. Equally, the grading machines that need to be secured to make sure there is a possibility of a new operator coming forwards without that heavy capital cost of reopening a market. We need to keep the options open for under 10 boats in particular to land their fish in Plymouth and in other ports and have it overlanded to Plymouth to keep the viability of that sector. We need a new operator, but importantly, this must not be an opportunity for Sutton Harbour Holdings to bring forward plans for luxury flats on the site of the Fish Quay. It is something we know they've wanted to do for a great many amount of time. Sutton Harbour offers incredible opportunities for high-density lateral living with beautiful views, but it should not have those flats built on the Fish Quay, because as soon as homes are built on the Fish Quay, the possibility of preserving a vibrant fishing industry in Plymouth disappears almost together. We need to have the Fish Quay land safeguarded. The council has already made steps to do so in the local plan, but it has to be viable for a new operator to take it over. And that's why I'm hoping the Minister will be able to convene support for Plymouth City Council, for the members of Parliament from the area and the industry to look at what are the measures, what grants are available, what support is available from ministers and his department to make sure that the barriers to opening a new Fish Quay, to reopening it, to providing a new auction aren't set so high that it's impossible for anyone to take that steps, because it is absolutely essential that a new operator is found in order to do that. Chair, I did want to speak about the importance of making sure that we continue the further rollout of the Plymouth Life Jacket scheme with personal locator beacons. I realise that's a DFT rather than a DEFRA responsibility, but it is important that we send the message that safety is valued. But I think given the importance of the Plymouth Fish Quay and the fish market there, to make sure that is heard, I hope the Minister understands the cross-party concern that exists for this in the far southwest, and I hope he'll be able to support us in keeping the option open for a new operator to come in. Thank you.
Thank you. Derek Thomas.
Ms Rees, it's a real privilege to be able to speak in this debate in support of our inshore fleet right across Cornwall and beyond, and to commend my friend from HoC and St Austell for securing this debate. It was a genuine moving moment on Sunday morning when we in Newlyn remembered all those over 100 fishermen that had lost their lives around our waters. It was a really important thing to do, and I'm glad that we've got that annual service now to commemorate these fishermen, and for the deep sea mission to deep sea fishermen for the work that they do to support fishermen day and night wherever they might be fishing from. I wanted to talk a little bit about the extraordinary contribution that the inshore fleet and fishing makes to UK PLC and to the UK as a country. National food security. We began to talk about national food security. It's really important that we get energy and security and food security in the right place. We've demonstrated in Cornwall, a launch not so long ago, the true value of seafood to Cornwall. We launched a report earlier in the year. For every one fisherman, there are 15 jobs that are created, enormous amounts of money, good, nutritious food. There's no real part of Cornwall where our fishing industry doesn't reach. But the contribution that fishing makes to food security is a really important part, and I hope the Minister can contribute to conversations around across departments about how fishing is a key part of national food security. I don't think, but I would hope that the government would never shy away from supporting promoting UK fish on UK dinner tables and around the country. Also, the UK Fisheries Act, which I think was a fantastic thing that we could deliver after leaving the European Union, that has delivered. It's taken time, but it has enabled us to deliver regional management plans. So we have a far better understanding and hopefully ability to plan and control fish stocks and harness and manage fish stocks around different parts of the coast. We all know in Cornwall, for example, we have mixed fishery, which is not typical elsewhere. And so it's important we have a regional management plan, Ms Rees. But I want to commend the Cornish Fish Producers Organisation and others who have really contributed to that work in a really mature and smart and intelligent way to help shape the Act and also help shape those regional plans. But the pace has been slow, and the pollock ban, while it's regretful, and as the member has said who opened the debate, the response that the department has made, and the Minister in particular and his colleagues, to compensate fishermen and support fishermen who would rely on pollock, particularly this early part of the year, has been really helpful. But actually, these regional plans can avoid those shocks in the future, so I'd really encourage and support the Minister's efforts to use regional management plans to avoid these shocks and enhance and secure stocks as we always wanted to see, but haven't necessarily been able to until recently. It builds confidence for the fishing fleet. Infrastructure investment, we've had the £100 million seafood fund. Will the Minister be able to commit at all, or at least comment on the appetite to make sure that fund is available again in the future? We need to continue that work to transition our fleet to a much more sustainable, to meet the sustainability commitments we've got, but also to invest in our harbour infrastructure so that actually our harbour infrastructure, port infrastructure, meets not just the inshore fleet, the fishing fleet that lands, as we heard about the issues in Plymouth, but also other things that are being delivered at sea, such as floating offshore wind, etc. It's really important that where fish is landed, the facilities are there to make the most of the value of that fish. A significant opportunity sits before us. You've heard about it. We've heard about it already, Ms. Rees, and the Minister is aware of our commitment to this. But the opportunity exists where we can create the exclusive 12-mile limit with the Brexit fisheries deal renegotiation in 2026 cannot be understated. The opportunities that exist, in particular for the inshore fleet, are extraordinary. It offers a massive win for the UK sustainability fishing industry. For example, a better way to manage and protect and enhance our fish stock. The member for St Austell Newquay talked about the fact that inshore fleet are limited to days at sea in terms of effort because of the weather. It's a really good way of managing fish stock and making sure that by protecting that 12-mile limit, actually we give the inshore fleet a much greater access to fantastic, nutritious food for our tables. It has the opportunity to revive and enhance our coastal communities. There's no part of my constituency that doesn't have a history and some presence still of inshore fishing fleet. And so the opportunity to continue to support them, to enhance the inshore fleet, to give the opportunity to grow those communities and all those jobs we talked about is there to be had. Restore the fishing fleet and skills and help secure food security with a particularly nutritious offer for our UK consumers. Thank you, Ms. Rees.
Geraldine McCrory.
Rees. And I congratulate my friend and neighbour on securing this debate, one which is vitally important not only to my constituents, but also to my family. My husband, as many of you know, is an under-10 commercial fisherman. And I spoke about this in my maiden speech 4 years ago now. And I just thought I'd remind the Chamber what I said then. I said, when he rings to say that he's still an hour away from safety and that the weather has taken a turn for the worst, I can tell you now that the dread is palpable. And it's still the same feeling, because it happens from time to time. And I said that we need to champion our small boats, that their job is precarious enough. We need to support our coastal communities to brave the elements and thrive in the 21st century, and that there are opportunities on the horizon, and that we need to grab them with both hands and bring them home. This is as true today as it was then, and I think we absolutely have the opportunities ahead of us that they and we can take advantage of. I don't think we're valuing our under-10 fleet in the way, or the fishermen themselves, in the way that we could just yet. As we've heard already, such a vessel is generally crewed by a single hand. They can't go that far. They can't stay out for more than about a day. They often fish overnight. Yet especially the handliners, will bring home the most sustainable and best quality catch that this country has to offer. They help each other at sea and on land, and therefore they're promoting and preserving our communities in a way that we would all welcome, I think. So there's lots that the government has done on their safety and on the grant schemes, and they all want to say thank you for that. But at the moment, they're tying themselves in knots over MCA and MMO rules and regulations. Now, they understand why these are there and that they're for their safety and for the safety of others. But these men work 15-hour days, pretty much. And I've heard from men, it's usually men, sorry to say, that, you know, some of them aren't tech savvy, some of them don't even have mobile phones, some are dyslexic, some just didn't get very good qualifications at school, and so they're finding it really difficult for all this admin to stay on top of. So monthly safety records, catch returns, MCA checks, this just to name but a few. So they understand why we need to be doing that, but please, please, can we just continue to make it as much more simple as possible? And in addition to that, they've now had one of their main species quota removed, pollock, and I would like to put on record my genuine thanks to the Minister who listened endlessly to us and to the Secretary of State for their persistence in ensuring a compensation scheme for boats. And this has been very welcome, and I know that there are dozens that have been helped. But I'm really, and it does pain me to say this, I'm really sorry to say that I'm still receiving representations, formally and informally, from many of the small producers who just missed out, and they are really struggling still. So this is coming from the very much smaller vessels. So I'd be really grateful to discuss with ministers that there are still boats just struggling and what potentially we might be able to do to just help keep them going until we come up with a longer term plan. But more than that, they just need the quota back, particularly for the handliners. And we went over the arguments when we were trying to work out a compensation scheme. These vessels do not make a dent in stocks. And so to suggest that they do, compared to the enormous factory ships that are out at sea, is frankly ludicrous. And I would go even further. Perhaps with the exception of bass, I would take away quota limits on any species for the under 10s, particularly the under 10 handliners, because they make such a little dent on that. Let them catch what passes their way, so long as their licences allow them to. They simply cannot dent the stocks. Now, I'm a great supporter of the angling businesses in my country. In fact, that is what my husband used to do. I've got great many friends in that industry. It's great for the Cornish economy. It's great for tourism. But at the moment, it's not a level playing field. Now, most smart angling trips will promote catch and release and only take what they want for the table. But I have seen others, and I've sent them to ministers before, photos of social media where the anglers are just taking too many. They are filling up their boats with pollock, and it's just a real slap in the face for the commercial fishermen who not only have lost out on the compensation scheme, but also still can't catch anything. And they're having to throw them back dead often, just so we're clear. So what they would like to see is the MMO just levelling that playing field and, you know, checking what's coming in on the angling boats as well. If we don't take stock of where we are now, I'm worried that we'll see our Cornish harbours filled just with yachts and no working boats, whereas if you have a healthy mix of both, that's a healthy economy and good for Cornwall. So what do we need to be doing? For me, just as we're now starting to do with farming, we need to highlight and value and assist the smaller producers that bring home the most valuable produce to market to ensure they receive a fair price for their insanely hard work, that the things that they have to do outside of fishing are as easy as possible. So not just the admin that I've mentioned already, but more fuel barges. You know, we'd like to have one in the Bay of Falmouth, but I can't work out how to get one set up or where it could go, so help to do that would be great. And also help to land the product. So we've heard obviously about Plymouth already. We know that Newlyn is going great guns. It's not so much where the fish get landed, but where they can get a fair price, which usually happens at the auction. So where are the auctions going to be to ensure that they can do that? And also bringing new blood into the industry. We can see that there are some good apprenticeship schemes on the larger boats down in Newlyn, but actually I'd like to see some apprenticeships on the smaller boats too, where the skippers who have been at sea for a long time can actually bring on the young blood. Now, I agree with my honourable friend on 2 out of 3 of his requests, and the one I slightly disagree on or would need more thinking on is the bass licences, and this is very important, because if you just give the bass licences out to everybody else, those that have them immediately see a devaluation of their vessel. So please, can we think very carefully before we accept that? But I just want to put on record my thanks to all the fishermen who risk their lives, and believe me, they do, when the fresh fish is delivered. And if everybody in the UK ate British fresh fish, we would hopefully support them ourselves. Thank you.
Daniel Zeitner.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to serve with you and the Chair, Ms Rees, and I congratulate the Honourable Member for St Austell and Newquay for securing this debate, because the inshore small-scale fleets are vital not just to the fishermen and their families who rely upon them for household income, but also, as we've heard, the shore jobs they sustain and the wider benefit these iconic fleets deliver across their coastal communities. There is rightly so a proud heritage of fishing at the heart of our coastal towns and villages, not just in the southwest but across the country. It's not unusual to meet fishermen that can trace their fishing families back many generations. And I recently met one in Beer who can trace his family's fishing routes back to the 1600s. I should say at the outset, we're discussing the under-10s, but I'm mindful this can sometimes seem a somewhat arbitrary definition that came into force long ago and perhaps does not always properly recognise the differences between a 7-metre open-top boat that launches off a cobble beach compared to an under 10-metre twin rig trawler or indeed a 15-metre clinker-built wooden boat with less power and catching efficiency than some under 10s. It's perhaps under time to consider if one size always fits all. But these brave fishers who set sail in the smallest of our boats, risking their lives to bring us fish suppers, are in many cases having a really challenging time. The stress and anxiety around the coast is palpable, and I think we heard it in many of the contributions today. And I also pay tribute to organisations such as Seafarers UK, the Fishermen's Mission, and the other charities that help fund and support our small-scale fleets with mental health and financial support for households when families find themselves without a safety net and nowhere to turn. And as we've heard, this debate is particularly timely with the National Fishing Remembrance Day events held just a few days ago. Now, I think it's indisputable that this sector has struggled in recent years, lurching, I'm afraid, from one crisis to the next, leaving these micro-businesses, often single-handed owner-operators, to try and piece together a living against a backdrop of too often knee-jerk fisheries management. And most recently, the pollock debacle has left so many of these vessels without fishing opportunities for part of the year. And frankly, a compensation scheme that seems to many one that was rushed through without consultation, which has seen many not receiving much needed help. And while I understand the 30% bar set for the scheme may sound reasonable, it doesn't take sufficient account of those small-scale fleets who earn modest incomes of £20,000 to £30,000 a year and the hardship caused by losing 20% of their income with no opportunities to replace it. And I hope the Minister will tell us who fed into this policy, why it was decided these artisan fishermen would receive nothing. And I think I and many others would be grateful if he could take another look at the scheme and see what could be done to help support those that have been so far forgotten. And I won't say too much about the ministerial direction that was required to introduce this scheme, but it is at best unusual. And I wonder if the Minister could tell the House in his recollection just how often it's been needed. I'd also be interested to hear what the plan is for managing the angling sector's catch and retaining a pollock, as we've heard. Almost 12 months after IC's advice for zero TAC was published, why has there not been a consultation to consider whether legislation should be brought forward to track and limit recreational catches? Now, we know from the fascinating correspondence between the Permanent Secretary at DEFRA and the Secretary of State, to which I've already referenced, that pollock has been in decline for many years. So can I ask the Minister how many other stocks have been poorly managed and are at risk of big reductions and zero tax? He may wish to say none, but if he doesn't, I suspect we can fear the worst. Now, pollock is just the latest problem demonstrating the sector has been let down. Those Brexit promises of protection to 12 miles, a pie-crust promise easily made and broken like so many others. We've had capping exercises that have had to be reversed, entitlement requirements that now seem challengeable, fisheries management plans being rolled out at eye-watering speed, little understanding of why some stocks were chosen, the several failed starts of IVMS, with type approvals certifying kit, then suspending them, subsequently reinstated, and then removed, all after some fishers have followed government guidance and rushed to install them. They've had to endure the catch-up, being told it was fit for purpose when it was not, and all of this against the backdrop of new codes from the DFT via the Maritime and Coast Guard Agency. I won't, given the I'm very pressed for time, I'm afraid, with little consideration across government, as it would seem to the timing. And of course, the issues raised around the Plymouth fish market, I very much welcome the comments made by my honourable friend from Plymouth, Sutton and Devonport. So is it any wonder, Ms Rees, that fishers feel persecuted and left behind? Good fisheries management and enforcement is vital to healthy seas and stocks and food security. But frankly, there can be no doubt that while this government has heaped new burdens of epic proportions onto this sector in the past few years, it's not delivered its side of the bargain and delivered coherent and considered fisheries management of opportunities so that families can earn a living and businesses can plan their future. So finally, Chair, I'd urge the Minister to consider the way in which fisheries management plans and other work streams have been developed. If he really wants to see more engagement from this sector, He genuinely wants their views and input. He needs to direct those conducting them not to hold meetings in the middle of the day, in the middle of the week, forcing fishermen to choose between losing sea time and earnings, along with consideration of the cumulative impact of multiple consultations being run by separate organisations simultaneously. These are actually in his gift to fix, and I'd be grateful if he could commit to this. The under-10 fleet are critical to coastal communities. They're struggling, and more needs to be done to secure their future.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to serve with your chairmanship once again. And can I start by paying tribute to the member for St Austell for securing this debate. I think I should be clear at the beginning, it's probably not going to be possible for me to respond to all the points raised in the debate in the 8 minutes that are, or 7.5 minutes that are now available to me, but I will do a rapid response as I can to get through as much as we can. So first of all, let me start by saying last Sunday, joining colleagues within the Chamber, I had the privilege to attend the memorial service in Grimsby as part of the National Fishing Remembrance Day. We are very grateful to those who have given their life at sea in order to secure fish for the tables of our nationality, but we must work tirelessly to make sure that those numbers are not increased and that we keep people safe at sea in the future. Now, the fishing industry in the South West has an extraordinarily rich heritage and wonderfully diverse fleets, as my honourable friend has eloquently set out. And there is a strong industry leadership within the region. I commend the work of the Cornish Fish Producer Organisation, for example, who've been innovative across a range of issues. And their report into the true value of seafood to Cornwall makes powerful reading, showing that there are 15 shore-based jobs for every fisherman, and that seafood jobs are 4 times more important to Cornwall than they are to the rest of Great Britain. I think it's something we need to bear in mind when we're making decisions in the future. I think the innovative marketing of Cornish sole, otherwise known as megrim, has yielded benefits in terms of increased sales, and I hope that the marketing of Cornish king crab will in due course work wonders for spider crabs. So the industry has worked hard to ensure that Marine Stewardship Council accreditation for Cornish sardines and Cornish gillnet caught hake. So I pay tribute to all of the work that's been going on. But I do acknowledge there are challenges too, many of those raised by colleagues within the Chamber this afternoon. So let's start with pollock. The honourable friend for St Austell and Newquay recognised the action that we've taken to compensate those who have been impacted. We were challenged that we should have had a consultation, apparently, we should have consulted. Now, I think at that moment in time, had the government said, thanks for raising your concerns, we've heard you, we're going to have a 3-month consultation before we decide what to do, we would have had a disaster. There was not time to navel gaze at that moment. That's why the government took strong action at the time and stepped in to try and assist those fishermen. And I'm very grateful for honourable members in the room who came banging on my door with enthusiasm and tenacity in order to secure the future of those fishermen, because we want to keep them fishing. We want to keep them in those ports, generating those jobs, and that's why we went out. We set up a scheme. I think around 50 vessels, owners directly compensated for half their reported pollock landings income in 2023. So that's almost £400,000 has been paid out so far, and there are a number of owners still to submit their paperwork, and I encourage them to do that. Just turning to bass, of course, another very significant fish species, and the honourable friend for St Austell and other colleagues rightly raised the importance of bass fishermen to the South West as they are around the country. That's precisely why we worked with the fishing industry on a bass fisheries management plan, and that FMP published last December sets out a roadmap for sustainable domestic stock management. And that is absolutely crucial. I think we should be clear, and I should be clear, that getting that balance right between increasing fishing opportunities where we can, but protecting stock for future generations is the balance we always seek to strike. And that's not always easy, because, of course, you do have impact on people's incomes and their ability to catch fish, but every fisherman I meet tells me that they want future generations to be able to carry on catching fish, and they believe in that sustainability, but want to work with the government to make sure that we see that. There was quota was mentioned briefly. I just want to say that for many years we have heard that there seems to be an imbalance between the inshore fleet and having access to what they see as their fair share of quota compared to those who are not of 10 metres, who are larger vessels. And of course we will continue to listen to those representations and make sure that we find a way through that. Tuna, I think I'm on record as being quite excited about the opportunities that tuna bring. That was mentioned by a number of colleagues. I regret to say that we only currently have just over 66 tonnes of bluefin tuna quota, but I'm very keen to try and increase that in future and make sure that we seize those opportunities, both in the sporting sector and for commercial fisheries, to make sure that we make the most of those opportunities. Before I finish, I do want to just turn to the immediate challenge of the Plymouth loss of the Plymouth auction and port there. And I think it's something that we're very keen to try and help if we can. I want to keep colleagues as informed as that, and I'm very grateful to Honourable Member for South East Cornwall, who raised this with me last week to highlight the challenge that they are facing. I think the best outcome there is for the private sector to try and step in, but there may well be a role for government to try and assist in that process. What I don't want to do is see fish moved in the short term to Brixham and to other ports, maybe Newlyn, and then that corrupt the model that exists at Plymouth for the longer term. But of course, we do want to see that succeed. Now, of course, I'll work with colleagues across party to make sure that we can try and find solutions to that. And I think it may well be worth convening a cross-party round table to make sure that we are informed in government and that you're aware of what we're doing. So I, of course, commit to that. So in conclusion, just to give the honourable member time to sum up his debate, I'd like to end on an upbeat note. I think the inshore fleet does have a positive future. I'm always impressed by their passion, their innovation to the industry, and I'm sure they'll find a way to benefit from the opportunities and the challenges that they are facing. And the government's here to help. We have a track record of helping. We'll continue to help. And I think working together, continuing to have that dialogue, will make sure that we have a bright, profitable and sustainable future for the fishing sector in the South West.
Thank you. Steve Double to wind up.
Thank you very much, Ms Rees. And first of all, say thank you to all colleagues for what I think has been an excellent debate across the House and a broad agreement of our support for our under 10 fishing fleet. I have to say, the only disappointment was I think the Shadow Minister showed a lack of understanding actually of what fishermen want, and I think that's disappointing. But very grateful to the Minister's response and his ongoing work to support our inshore fleet, particularly in the South West. Particularly welcome his commitment to have a round table about the future of the Plymouth market, because I think we all have agreed how important that is. So very much welcome that and look forward to being able to hopefully partake in that as well, because I think our fishermen would be very pleased to see that we're working together across parties to do what we can to maintain that. I think it's just very welcome that we're able to have this debate and support our fishing industry and show them our support and continue to work together to make sure that they have the very best opportunity to continue to thrive in the future, and of course continue to promote fish as the most sustainable source of protein that we can provide, and the more we can get British people eating fish that are caught in British waters, the better it is for everyone, and I'm sure that's something that we will all support.
This is considered the future of the under 10 metre fishing fleet in the South West. As many as are of that opinion say aye. Aye. Of the contrary, no. I think the ayes have it, the ayes have it. Order, order. The sit-in stands adjourned.
The proceeding has ended. The proceeding has ended.